Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Well, welcome back to FamBase Sports. My name is Jared Hall, and this is Kari Damos. And today, guys, we got a lot to talk about. We have a lot to talk about because, man, oh man, NIL, Nick Saban, Jimbo Fisher, the drama that was going on over there. Jimbo Fisher saying that, hey, listen, man, someone should slap Nick Saban. The calling him a hypocrite, narcissist. Deion Sanders being even involved with Jackson State. Guys, we got a fun show for you guys today. We're also going to talk about some NFL scheduling and, of course, playoffs, because, of course, that is one of the hottest things going on so far. But, guys, thank you guys so much for joining the show. We got 11 viewers in, so right now everything's here. I see my boy Brock is in here, Nabel, Crimson Brave, the usual suspects. Thank you guys so much for stopping by the stream. And yeah, guys, we are live every Tuesday, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But I'm here with my co-host Kyrie, man. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing all right, Jarek. It's great to be back. And, oh, man, like you said, it's a lot going on, a lot on the docket right now. And, man, this NIL conversation, we were talking about it pre-show in our meeting. And, I'm really excited to get this going. You want me to kick it off? Or you want to kick it off?
Please, let's get it. Let's get it, man. Because we were going off like 10, 15 minutes before this thing kicked off.
100%. 100%. So I just, man, it's first and foremost, for any of you college football fans out there, just going to take a look at the schedule real quick here. Because, everybody's got to be looking forward to this A&M Alabama matchup coming up this fall. And it's looking like the Tide will be playing they'll be hosting A&M on October 8th. So please be on the lookout for that game later this fall. And, it's going to be must-see TV, seeing the pregame, seeing the post-game handshake, seeing if there are any pregame pleasantries between the two coaches. But first and foremost, man, I shared this before the show. I'm sticking by this thought. Personally, to see the greatest coach of all time in college football history, to see him complain so much so about the name, image, and likeness changes, because the thing I didn't like about that, it's so discouraging to see him do that, because like to hear him say, beginning of his statement, like he was like, talking about all the good things that NLI did and how his kids earn this much money and how, they worked so hard for it. And Bryce Young got, his 7-figure deal last year and everything like that. Right. Then to turn it back around and say, well, some of these teams, like, they got to pay all their guys, obviously, namely talking about Texas A&M, and then to, point out that Travis Hunter chose Jackson State over Florida State and other Power 5 schools. So I just personally don't see why, if any coach is saying this, I don't see why it's Nick Saban. If this is, the now fired Ed Orgeron, if this is Chip Kelly, if this is, even someone who's had a lot of success over the last few years, with Lincoln Riley, now that he's over in USC, I feel like, and, he's clearly been taking advantage of the NIL and transfer portals, but that's a whole discussion for a different day. But, for it to be Nick Saban, that just kind of threw me off and rubbed me the wrong way, because his message just seemed so out of touch. Like, I know he's an older guy. I know he's, getting up there in his 70s now, but it just seems so out of touch because, one, he's 70 now. Like, he started in college football in an era when, hey, if you were getting top recruits, there was a price you had to pay literally and figuratively. And then also, too, I think for him, he's built up so many different – for him to build up Michigan State, LSU, Alabama, for him to have the success that he's had, you could say he's cornered a market in terms of recruiting and things of that nature. I just don't feel like him speaking on this and guys earning NIL does, because let's face it, a brand like Alabama, naturally, even if you're the backup offensive tackle, you may earn an NIL deal just if a company or organization hears the fact that, oh, that kid plays for Alabama, oh, I definitely want to get in on that. They think you're the next meal ticket. They think that your visibility will give their organization or brand visibility. So I don't know. I just personally didn't understand where Coach Saban was coming from. Like, I get that, some programs are probably pressing the limits of things like they did before the NIL deals came about last year. But I also think that he's being a little a little hypocritical with things. So, Jarek, you're our resident Tide fan. I'm personally an Ohio State fan, so I feel like I have a nice view on it. But to see the very very tip top program of the country, starting a ruckus over this, what are your thoughts on it all?
Well, from an Alabama's fans, perspective, I can kind of see where Nick Saban is kind of going with here, because I think what he was trying to say was that right now, very similar to how the transfer portal worked, or very similar to how how the spread system got introduced, and he made his rant about that, or some of the earlier systems of college football where they first kind of came into implications there. Nick Saban, for the most part, has been right as far as predicting exactly what type of direction we're pretty much where we're going. And for the most part, Saban in Alabama, they've had to adjust to where college football was to what it is kind of now. Nick Saban is one of the best coaches in college football when it simply comes to adapting. He will let you know exactly what is going on, and then he'll do it himself. So that's why the hypocrisy kind of comes into play, because Nick Saban, he will fall in line, and he will definitely go to and doing NIL. I think another thing too was that he was trying to get a message to his boosters, telling them, listen, we got to step it up a little bit here, because me and my coaching staff, I can continuously bring in really good coaches, really good recruiters that can get kids to come play for our university. As a coach, one of the best things is helping out these young men get to the NFL or life after football, getting their degree. It's a special moment, but I can't get these kids to come here. Nowadays with NIL money, they're going to go somewhere else. We saw with Texas A&M, or with the assumption of Texas A&M, that they had all those 5-star recruits. They had the greatest recruiting class in the history, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite, because of major NIL deals. And it's understandable because, these kids were predicted. Like the Brock Landerman guy, he was projected of going to Florida. He was, we had some kids that were projected of going to Oklahoma, Texas, and then all of a sudden they just make the last minute flip situation. So I can understand exactly why NIL can definitely why NILs definitely can make it, why that assumption could definitely be in place. But overall wise, man, again, there's the hypocrisy that you're going to use it. You said that you're not going to use it, but you are definitely going to use NIL at some point to get kids to come to to buy into the program. Otherwise, otherwise that's where we can see the failure of certain programs. Like you see Dabo Swinney, he's not adapting at all to the transfer portal. And you see what Clemson, they went from being top of the hill, undefeated, national champions, getting top 5, top 10 recruiting classes, to now they can't really even get there. They're struggling. They're not really implementing the transfer portal to their ideals, and now they're kind of being left behind. How many times have we seen programs LSU with Les Miles? What was one of the biggest reasons why Les Miles was fired? Not because of lack of talent, but because he never really adapted to the spread system. So unfortunately, this is an era that we're going towards. Kids will be looking at what USC is doing. They will be looking at what Texas A&M is doing, and it won't be like a whole bunch of universities, because we talked about this a little bit earlier. But there's going to be certain universities, very few universities, that rises up to the occasion every single year. And it's up to them if they're going to stay up there or if they're just going to drop back down, kind of a one-year wonder program. But the top programs that continue to be consistent year in and year out are programs that constantly adapt to change. And so far from what we've been seeing, USC has done that with the transfer portal, recently bringing in Jordan Addison, who's a projected first-round pick. And then obviously what A&M continues to do, of bringing talent. And it doesn't mean that Texas A&M is going to be a top-tier program, because next year I think they're going to go 8-4, maybe best case scenario they win 9 games. But if they continuously use the NIL to their advantage when it comes to topping programs like Alabama and Georgia, then so be it. And that's kind of one of my biggest things that we're going to get into is for Jimbo Fisher, because for Jimbo Fisher, man, it's kind of like he threw let's be honest, he threw a temper tantrum. Even if it's true, right? Let's say we're completely right, which I believe I'm right. I believe that pretty much everyone else is right about Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M. But if it is true that Jimbo Fisher pretty much pay, or A&M, the boosters, pay these kids millions of dollars, or that these kids will soon enough get $1 million NIL deals, or somewhere around the 6-figure 7 mark, who cares? It's legal. It's legal now. Who cares? It is what it is. If I'm Jimbo Fisher, I says, yeah, I'm paying these players, and it is what it is. It's part of college football. It's a part of the new era, the new age era. And if you're not going to adapt to it, we're just going to simply leave you behind. So that's kind of my thoughts about it from that perspective, man.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought Jimbo back up, because I think on one end, like, I listen, I applaud Jimbo for stepping up to the plate and standing up for himself, and kind of being so. I mean, he wasn't afraid to tug on Superman's cape. Let's say that. But I also was like, wait a minute, I'm not sure how this adds up, because I vividly remember this was a couple weeks back now. This might have been a week or two before this comment was made by Coach Saban. Jimbo Fisher was on Rich Eisen's show, his daily talk show, and he was saying how, they run a clean program, that they're not paying all these guys this and that. And then for this statement, it almost was like a follow-up. It was kind of like a sneak diss by Coach Saban, where he, dropped, he mentions A&M, even though it was a direct shot. But the fact that, like, Jimbo had said this not too far before Coach Saban made this comment. So, for it to be so quick in timing after the fact, I don't think is a coincidence. But also, too, like, I think on a more macro level, I think the big thing with this situation is, like, I don't think Coach Saban should have singled out A&M, because, let's face it, like, for years and years and years, college football has been this dicey game of, well, do we pay the players? Do we not pay the players? And now these guys can make money. And now these guys who are coming from tough backgrounds can earn a living for themselves, and can provide for themselves when they don't have the opportunity to work. Because again, that was another issue I had with Coach Saban, was the fact that he was like, well, these kids, they've always been able to work. I mean, in theory, yes, but when are they going to fit working into a full class load schedule, a full game schedule, practice schedule? You got your weight room schedule. You got your meeting schedule. You got your study hall schedule. Like, I just don't understand why he would be so dismissive about that specifically. And I think the thing that hurts with that is just the simple fact that that these kids, with them being able to make this money now, like, Coach Saban, you've benefited tremendously off of, I don't want to say free labor, because that would, that wouldn't necessarily be the right term. But I mean, yes, these kids are getting a free scholarship for their education, but what are the scholarships really even worth? How many of these kids are actually graduating and going on to pursue a career in the fields that they study in? And I also think that just the simple fact that, with Coach Saban, he's a guy too now that, he's at the point where he's made so much money, like, and he's had so much success in college football. Like, you're not necessarily, he's clearly adapted. Like you said, he's adapted to college, or to the change, with NIL and throughout history, moving to more of a spread system, things like that, all that. But, like, you're still benefiting from this. Whereas some programs, they're just now going to be able to reach up a little bit. Like, the thing I like about NIL is, obviously for the players' perspective, them getting paid, that's huge. But just the fact that these kids, are able to go to programs now that, hey, you know what? It's a bunch of high school players that, they reached out to each other, say, hey, we all want to play together. Let's go build up Texas. Let's go bring back USC. Let's go make Miami a power again, right? I think you're going to be able to see programs do that. But I also think, too, that these blue chip programs at the top, the ones that already have the huge name brands, the ones that are already winning 10, 11, 12, 13 games every year, I think they're going to continue to make that much more money, which is good because it's a trickle-down effect for those kids. So why wouldn't you want to spread that to the kids? And, I'll get to the Deion Sanders portion of it. I'll ask you first, Jarek, just what were your thoughts there? Because for me personally, like, I was more upset about what he said specifically with Deion Sanders and Travis Hunter. Because, at the end of the day, yeah, Texas A&M is a true rival now of Alabama, now that they're SEC counterparts. And it'll be interesting to see what the SEC even looks like, let alone college football, once all of these colleges realign in the next couple of seasons. But, just what are your thoughts there? Because personally, I think the fact that Travis Hunter flipped from FSU to Jackson State is more so about you get to learn the game of college football as a DB prospect under the greatest defensive back of all time, and why not help start something new and create a new legacy, at programs like Jackson State, help to be able to bring HBCUs back to relevancy.
Yeah, so I will say this. The Jimbo Fisher one, I wasn't that mad about. I was actually a little shocked that he would actually, go out there and call Jimbo Fisher, but I know what he was trying to do. He was really just trying to use an example of the potential abuse of NIL, very similar to what he talked about the transfer portal, because it was actually very, very similar to where when he talked about the transfer portal, he talked about that, hey, players now can just do whatever they want. They can, they don't like a situation. They don't like, the adversity that they're going to be facing against. They're going to hop in the portal the next day. And it's going to really just mess up everything, mess up the entire rotation of college football, including potentially their own careers. And in a way, he was kind of right, because you look at players like Brew McCoy, who transferred to like 2 or 3 different universities and literally in a year, and he's still trying to figure out some things out. Obviously, we had a guy from, I forgot what his name is, but he went from the Tate Martell from Bishop Gorman, who transferred to 4 universities. He's done now. Yeah. And, again, he didn't really like the adversity that he was at Ohio State, to where, where he was at Miami, where they had to, they didn't think he even can play quarterback, and they put him at receiver, went back to UNLV, didn't really work out there. So in ways, he was kind of right. But, again, Nick Saban, he's gonna say it how it is. Whether if you're gonna like what he says, or what you don't gonna like it, because he is going to say what he wants to say. And in ways, again, the hypocrisy about it is that he's going to use the system to his advantage. He will warn you what's going to happen, and then he'll do it the next day. I think that's kind of the Bama fan kind of talking out of me. But going back to the Deion Sanders Jackson State, this was the one where I'm like, okay, I didn't have a problem with Jimbo Fisher. I had a problem with Jackson State and Deion Sanders, because that is definitely an assumption, because he took that from pretty much a quote, a news article quote, and I forgot the news article quote. So maybe one of you guys in the comment section could definitely help me out about that. But he literally word for word said exactly what was going on with Jackson State with Travis Hunter, talking about that, hey, they paid him $1 million to come to the university. And again, I have friends, I have family members that have gone to Jackson State, they're alumnus there. They have, they texted me, they say, listen, we barely have any money at all to pay a kid $1 million. We can't even afford, building, new athletic institutions, weight room programs, trying to build up our conditioning program, which I think they're still trying to work on to this day. They barely have any money to, upgrade their libraries. Is why even though, HBCUs, historical Black colleges are very, very important to this country, especially for, people of my skin color. Again, as far as, donations, big boosters, nowhere near Texas A&M and Texas and some of these other big programs and other big universities. So I definitely felt like that was out of field. And who cares? I mean, they're not competing for a national championship like you are. They're not, they're in their own lane. They're doing their own thing. And Deion Sanders, who knows? He might not even be there the next 2 to 3 years, because he's doing a phenomenal job right so far. He's always stated that, listen, if he ever has an opportunity to potentially go up and potentially coach at a Division I, or maybe he gets a professional head coaching opportunity, he's definitely going to consider taking that. But at this point, it's like Jackson State, they're doing their own thing. When it comes to football, they haven't really been good since the 60s and 70s, which of course, that's when the SEC started to introduce more Black African-American players to come and play for the South. Before, they were all at HBCUs. That's why when you look at NFL Hall of Famers, you will see a long list of African-American Hall of Famers that came from HBCUs. So I had a problem personally with the Jackson State and the Deion Sanders situation. I felt like that was uncalled for, even though, again, he tried to really use it. He tried to use them as an example. He tried to really use them kind of as an example with the A&M situation about potentially what the situation is going to be when it comes to NIL. But yeah, I felt like that was wrong. Saban, he did come out, he did apologize for it. Deion Sanders kind of forgave him for that. They're gonna talk in private, or Deion Sanders has stated that, hey, listen, man, we might do this publicly, but they're gonna talk in private. They might do it publicly. They'll make amends for it. Deion Sanders, he's come out and he said, listen, man, Saban's basically doing this so we can try to, get the boosters to help Alabama out as far as recruiting goes, because Nick Saban knows that they have to compete. Nick Saban is one of the best adapters in college football. He's going to do whatever it takes to keep his program atop. He's going to do whatever it takes when it comes to that situation. So Deion Sanders, at least from his perspective, he knows what's going on. He knows that he didn't mean to really down the program of Jackson State. It still was an uncalled for comment. He did apologize for it. But yeah, I'm with you, Kyrie. When I first heard that, I'm like, that's kind of, I'm a huge Nick Saban fan, but that was kind of left field.
For sure. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, even as an Ohio State fan, I'm a huge fan of Saban. I've always had respect for greatness. He's the greatest to ever do it. And especially to do it in modern college football where, there's so many other resources and so many avenues, and kids aren't hidden gems like they were before. If kids are playing football, they probably have tape and you probably can reach out to them some way or another, so like for him to be as dominant as he has been, I have so much respect for him. But I was more upset for two things, like we mentioned with the Travis Hunter thing overall, like for that specific situation, I just think he missed the point on, because if it would have been one thing if he had pointed out Caleb Williams going to USC, because not only is Caleb Williams going to play with his former coach in Lincoln Riley, but it's USC, it's Hollywood, that's a school that brings in a lot of money, whether the football team is good or bad, you know what I mean? So like, if you want to talk about that, or, like in the comments, I see Jordan Addison, a name that was mentioned there as well. But my response to that is really, who cares? Because at the end of the day, that's what these coaches were doing. A lot of these coaches come in, get gigs, they stay there, whether it's for the money, whether it's they love the role, whether they love the program, whatever the case is, but they're only there for a certain period of time. And, if they have success, a lot of times those guys cash out. So, why can't the players do that? Jordan Addison was an All-American receiver last year, Biletnikoff winner. He decided, I'm going to up my stock and go someplace else where I can earn more money. And then even for Caleb Williams as well, same thing. And the thing I like about that is because, I think of there are three names that really stand out to me when it comes to this. All quarterbacks, but I think of guys like Tim Tebow. I think of guys like Vince Young, and I think of a guy like Matt Leinart when it comes to NIL, because all three of those guys, yes, they all, made their way to the NFL. None of them really had. I mean, Tim Tebow probably had the most success in terms of his run in Denver. Vince Young was Rookie of the Year. Leinart was bounced around for a little bit as well. But all three of those guys, if all three of those guys could have earned NIL money in college, they would have probably never had to have worked a day in their life ever again after that. Yes, they would eventually have gone on to the NFL and earned money and things like that. But just think about some of those huge names that were just dominant college superstars. Things never really panned out for them in the NFL. Like, those guys are able to make the money that, really could help set them up for the rest of their lives. I think of a guy like Toby Gerhart, a guy like Jared Johnson, the running back from Boise State.
Johnny Manziel.
Johnny Manziel.
Literally built the stadium. Literally, the upgraded version of Kyle Field literally was from his jersey sales and some of in his merchandise.
100%. So like, that just, to me, like, that's why I love the NIL so much. Now, granted, yes, like Saban said, I do think there needs to be some management, but I think that is more of an NCAA thing. I think, and that we could go on for years on end talking about that, just about how mismanaging the NCAA is, and just the fact that, like, even with the conference realignment situation now, I really think that with the NCAA, it's just looking like more and more like it's going to be disbanded to an extent. I think there might be it won't just go away, but the NCAA as we know it, up until I would say even last year, That those days are behind us. And I'm honestly happy those days are behind us. I went to, we talked about this a little bit off air. I played a season at UB, and seeing a guy like Khalil Mack every day, like he could have made so much money as an NIL, with NIL and everything like that. And just knowing that the NCAA fought so hard for so long to keep this from happening, and now that it's actually here, and now that these schools are taking it into their own hands and are like, you know what, well, shoot, we might as well just go make a money conference, which is basically what Power 5 teams are anyways. They're playing in quote-unquote money conferences, now for them to just conglomerate a little bit and make it one unified thing while others drop off. I just personally, I just think it's really just the end of the NCAA as we know it. And kudos to all the programs for pushing on that, because I just I think it's important, because the NCAA for too long has, taken the power out of the kids' hands. Now that the kids have power, it's like these people don't know how to act. And I get it. When you lose power, like, yeah, it's something that affects you, and you may not know how to act because of it. But that's the thing. Like, these kids were so valuable to these organizations, to these schools, to these athletic departments, and to these football programs. So for them to be able to be compensated now, I'm just saying, keep going to earn them checks, boys.
Yeah, man. And here's one of the things that I think that, I guess, because obviously there's a lot of fans that were on the other side of the coin here that will sit up here and say, well, Saban is basically kind of talk about kind of the the reason why he's talking about these restrictions is because he, obviously when kids get that much money in your hands, can they manage it? Do they know how to manage it? Are they going to spend? Are they going to waste their money? Are you going to have a situation like Quinn Ewers where you get $2 million and then all of a sudden you don't even play a snap? You transfer to the University of Texas and that deal still is yours. They don't take that deal back. So it's kind of these contracts that in a way are not contracts. Like you're getting money, you're getting money from the spot, and then you're kind of leaving. And then obviously there's also some situations where what if players don't live up to their deal, like a DJ Uiagalelei, who got that mega Dr. Pepper deal, and he was projected to be the next star, and then all of a sudden he's kind of just fallen apart, but he got that, again, a huge mega deal from Dr. Pepper. So there's concerns about that. In my opinion, again, I think there was obviously there's a great comment. I forgot, I got to scroll to it, but it was a great comment talking about, well, we got to, one thing that I really would love to have is that we need to have more management. We need to have more, PR sessions about teaching these kids how to manage the money, how to invest, not waste, not wasting, millions, because this is not the NBA. Like, this is not the NBA or the NFL or the, whatever professional, league you're in, when all of a sudden you get, before, I think it's after when you declare, all of a sudden you're with these meetings and they're teaching you how to do this stuff. This is something that I think that for these universities, you have a great opportunity to learn how to do this. So I think instead of maybe potentially restricting NIL or, as far as number, we need to teach these kids how to manage their money. I think that is the most important part of anything, because because all of a sudden you're in college, you're an adult, you're a man now, and I think that we kind of these are 18, 19-year-old kids, but when you step up and now you're getting these huge NIL contracts, you're making some people are making more than some assistant coaches out there that's been coaching the game of football for years. So so in a way, how do we teach these kids how do we teach these kids to be men? And I think that is a very, very important lesson. It's something that we're going to have to try to figure out. The NCAA is going to have to try to figure out. These conferences and these coaches are going to have to try to, as far as recruiting pitches goes, I think they're going to have to try to figure out how they can, pitch into a kid about, hey, you come to us, we'll teach you everything that we need to know about NIL. I mean, again, some of these recruiting pitches, it's been about, you come here, it's national championship, you're an NFL first round pick, and you'll become a millionaire. Well, now it's not the case anymore. It's, you can be a millionaire literally before you even step on foot on campus now. And I think that's probably where things are out of control, is the fact that these boosters are paying kids before they even get to campuses, right? So if you dominate 7-on-7 camps, you get in that 27 Sports Composite or that Rivals or ESPN, and you become a major 5-star or 4-star recruit, you're already in talks in millions of dollars, and that's supposed to be when you're in the NFL, or before it was when you get to the NFL. That's when you're in that conversation. You're now having that conversation as a sophomore or junior in high school. So I do kind of see the point where fans want to try to tend towards, we're not saying that don't pay these kids. However, we got to have something in place so that these kids don't really abuse the NIL money, waste it all, kind of waste it a little bit all. And then all of a sudden they're not really, they're not really taught the proper ways of having money, especially because that's a lot of responsibility, especially that's life-changing money, not for themselves, but for their families.
For sure. Yeah. I'm going to just mention something quick before we move on to the next topic. But, I think two things with that. I think the first is that the big thing for me, like with the NIL and, these kids making that money now, like I look at two other names I wanted to mention are, one is Justin Ross. Think about if he had the opportunity to earn an NIL deal after his freshman year. I mean, he could have racked up so much money. And like for him to go on and get injured as often as he did, and for him now, as an undrafted free agent with the Chiefs, like great for him. He's getting this opportunity in the NFL. That's awesome. But like he had first round aspirations and really most likely would have been a first round pick if he hadn't got hurt. So like I like that insurance aspect of it, but I also do like too, like I know, yes, some of these deals are very much, hey, come get this bag. We want to endorse you. You scratch our back, we scratch yours. I do get that. But there are some of these firms that are going out of their way to really teaching these kids, some of those life skills that you mentioned. So I don't think that gets highlighted enough. And I don't think that should get lost, in the midst of all of this, because at the end of the day, yes, there are some people who are taking it too far. There are some who aren't adapting at all, but more times than not, when it comes to something like this, where so many schools are being affected by it, more times than not, people are coming towards the middle, more so than the ends with the extreme. So I really do think, at the end of the day, yeah, maybe it does need to be managed a little bit more, but to say that NIL deals are a bad thing for these kids and for these that it's a bad thing for these programs is just, again, trying to just exploit these kids again, because, they're finally getting a slice of the pie. But before we go too far deep down that wormhole, we got to keep the show going. I just wanted to get your thoughts on, the NFL schedule came out a few weeks back now, and, we've been able to review them a little bit, getting to stew these up. Just what are your thoughts? Are there any specific games and matchups that you're looking at? Any specific weeks, any primetime things? What are some things about the schedule that stood out to you?
Well, again, this normally is a Bills channel. So obviously I'm one of those people that, I'm looking so forward to going to some of these primetime games, but obviously the Packers game, I've always wanted the Bills to play the Packers on, kind of a prime time. For some reason, I've always wanted that game. I always wanted what would happen if Buffalo had an actual quarterback, and if we can play against Aaron Rodgers, that's prime time on Monday on, I think that's Sunday night or
Sunday Night Football. Yeah,
Sunday nights. Oh my God, Sunday nights. I mean, so now that the fact that we have Josh Allen, we're playing against Aaron Rodgers Sunday night, 8:20 Eastern. It's going to be cold, but it is what it is. But I am so looking forward to that game. Buffalo Bills, LA Rams, of course, that's going to be one heck of a spectacular game. Obviously, the AFC West, I'm so looking forward towards the AFC West, because literally that entire division is going to be like the Raiders, Broncos, Chargers, Raiders. I mean, again, the Kansas City Chiefs, obviously the Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes rivalry. Every time these guys face, it's never a blowout. It's always a shootout every single time. You're going to get primetime television. Seeing that division go into place, that is going to be extremely fun to watch. Obviously, again, focusing on some other areas, the NFC East, Dallas Cowboys versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Like, these could be the top two teams that are fighting for the division. Obviously the Giants are kind of like, the Giants are continuing to rebuild, trying to improve their roster. I think they're going towards a positive direction, but I don't think they're ready yet. Washington has the talent, but the question is, do they have the coaching capability in order to get that program and rising up to the top? Because last year, there were huge question marks when it came to the leadership, and I just don't know if they've made enough changes towards the leadership portion in order for them to get that team. Because honestly, they should have won the East last year. All that talent, the best, they were projected to be in the best front seven in all of football, And the fact that they not only did they, severely underachieved. I mean, they were one of the worst front. They went from being one of the worst front sevens in the league, even though they lost Chase Young. Still had guys like Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne,
Montez Sweat.
Oh my God, Matthew Ioannidis and Tim Settle was on that defense. I mean, so many guys, and they just could not get things together. So I'm honestly looking forward to the Philadelphia Eagles and Dallas Cowboys matchup. That's always star power looking up right there. Obviously, seeing the Baltimore Ravens battling the Pittsburgh Steelers, that game's been getting a lot more hype recently. Even though again those guys play twice a year, it's a divisional foe. That's football that you really really want to see right there. And then I think the last thing I do want to kind of see is obviously the Bills Dolphins. I really want to I'm actually excited to see the Bills versus Dolphins because obviously again there's a lot of Bama fans right over here to my right in the chat. But Tua Tagovailoa, man, I mean, he gets a lot of love and support from the Alabama community. The Dolphins community, it's been split because there's been people saying, well, we need to draft a quarterback, get Teddy Bridgewater. And then there's the other side that's kind of like, no, we want to support Tua. Tua's going to do his thing. He's going to shine. And the Dolphins arguably have a top 5 roster in the National Football League, but the one area that they have been missing at has been at the quarterback position. So I am interested to see if Tua can take that next step, because if they can, now all of a sudden we have a challenger for the AFC East crown. Now we have a great, again, because it was projected that, hey, you have Tua Tagovailoa with the Dolphins. You got Zach Wilson with the New York Jets. You have Josh Allen over here, and then obviously with Mac Jones with the New England Patriots. This is you have 4 first-round picks, guys that can rise up and take their teams to the next level. And all of a sudden, we saw when the Patriots beat the Buffalo Bills, but was that more Mac Jones, or was that definitely Josh Allen, the Buffalo Bills, and kind of the errors that they had when they lost to them at home? So obviously, can Tua take it to the next level? Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, you have one of the best young receiving corps in the National Football League. But Gesicki's still there available. You improve the offensive line, one of the most talented defenses in the National Football League. Can he take that next step? And can we potentially see a Dan Marino versus Josh Allen potential era? That's something that I want to see, because if there's any team that can eclipse Buffalo in that division, it is the Dolphins. So I am definitely looking forward to those matchups going into the 2022 football schedule.
Yeah, no, I totally agree about the Dolphins. I mean, I have a couple friends who are Dolphins fans, and I've told them, like, listen, man, hey, respect to them, because they just kept adding, they kept stacking this offseason. I mean, obviously getting Tyreek Hill is great, but you add Terron Armstead, you add Chase Edmonds, you add Cedric Wilson, to a unit that already has Mike Gesicki and Jalen Waddle. You bring Mostert in, for you to have those guys on defense, and I mean, probably the best corner tandem in the game with Xavier Howard and Byron Jones, and Javon Holland, unbelievable rookie season he had last year. Jalen Phillips as well, and Christian Wilkins and those guys. They've got dogs over there. So both of those games. I mean, for Miami, their goal has to be at least to split with the Bills. I think for the Bills' sake, obviously there's so many expectations and so much pressure, on them. Obviously coming out opening night, it'll be a true test. And I think when it comes to a team like this, and I'm not saying that the Bills need this in any way, but a lot of times I feel like throughout history with the NFL, teams like this that come in with such high expectations, I think the big thing is being able to have those like high moments, those moments where it's like it's easier to understand why they're getting motivated for a game like that. In so many primetime games, like you mentioned, the Packers game, opening up against the Rams, going to Cincinnati later on in the season on a Monday night as well. So a lot of different, even the Monday night game that for the home opener as well. So a lot of different opportunities for the Bills to really showcase, what they've put together, or what the roster that Brandon Beane has put together, here in Western New York. But I think a couple different weeks stand out to me. I always like to look at week 1 first and foremost, just because, obviously we got to start somewhere. And, some of the matchups that kind of stick out to me, I think one that's going to be interesting is, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the later in the season. I don't know why this didn't load up, but one that comes to mind right off the bat is Broncos Seahawks. The fact that
NFL game,
they really doubled down on that. Like, and I love, it's so funny to me. Like, I feel like the NFL, they do it on purpose. They know we want, like, obviously they have a composite system where the first place teams play the first place teams, and then specific divisions, and second place teams play second place teams, and so on and so forth. But the fact that out of the gate, first Monday night football game of the season, Broncos Seahawks, Russ's return, I think that's going to be huge. I'm interested to see as well. I'm really interested to see what Kansas City, Arizona looks like. Two former, I will say, two former Texas quarterbacks. I was gonna say, I forgot that Kyler Murray played at A&M before he went to Oklahoma, and then Patrick Mahomes went to Tech. So I was gonna say same schools, but they both are disciples of Cliff Kingsbury. So that's really gonna be a special day for him, I'm sure. One of the big matchups I'm looking forward to as well that week is Raiders Chargers, and again, like you mentioned, all of those guys in the AFC West are, I really truly could see any team in that division coming out on top. Like I really, I don't know if this is, I don't want to make this a hot take or anything like that, but I don't really expect the Chiefs to win that division this year. I really don't. I'm honestly looking to see what the Raiders do and really looking to see what the Chargers do, because I think talent-wise, those two might be the most talented rosters in that division. But again, we'll see how it all plays out. They're going to just all beat up on each other. But there's two other specific weekends on the schedule that stand out to me. And I think it really just goes to show just how, the NFL knows its place in this society. It really does. The first is week 16, which is Christmas weekend. So, there's going to be a full slate of games on Christmas Eve, which is Saturday. So, some of the best games from that day specifically, the Eagles and Cowboys matchup. There's a primetime game between the Vegas Raiders and Pittsburgh Steelers. The looks like Cincinnati comes to New England, so that'll be a nice chess match for Joe Burrow going up against Bill Belichick and his defenses. But also to have three games on Christmas Day. Obviously, most of us sports fans know that Christmas Day is generally reserved as the NFL's or as the NBA's major holiday game slate. The NFL has Thanksgiving Thursday. Generally we know the NBA for Christmas Day, but for the NFL to go up against the NBA, especially with some matchups like Green Bay, Miami, that's going to be a fun game. I could see Denver traveling all the way to LA to take on the Rams. That should be a fun matchup. Matt Stafford and Russell Wilson, but two pretty complete rosters. And then also too, the nightcap, the primetime game of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the Arizona Cardinals, two of the top teams in the NFC last season. So that really stood out. But also to the following weekend with week 17, because again, talking about how these weekends are lining up. So that is going to be New Year's weekend. And so New Year's Eve, there's going to be no games, so I'm sure the NCAA is looking to schedule as many of their college bowl games, obviously the New Year's 6 games are going to be taking place then. But the NFL is really taking the forefront that Sunday, almost full slate. There's going to be a Thursday game between the Cowboys and Titans, and the Bills will be playing at Cincinnati on Monday night. But outside of that, everybody else will be playing on New Year's Day. So, and you've got some big matchups. The Steelers take on the Ravens. You've got San Francisco traveling to LA to take on Vegas to take on the Raiders. The Battle of LA, the Chargers and Rams play. Minnesota, Green Bay. So, Denver takes on Kansas City, so a lot of big matchups that weekend. I think it really is just crazy to think that the NFL is at a point where, I think in years past, they tried to avoid, just for conflict's sake, of, hey, maybe we might have some viewership taken away because, some of these other weekends, things like that. But, they're really taking the bull by the horns now. And, that just goes to show the NFL is still king.
Yeah, man, and like I said, we're Bills fans. So the fact that the Bills have what 5 or 6 primetime football games that are on Thursdays, Sundays, Mondays, and Sundays. I mean,
6.
it is absolutely insane, and we're a part of that discussion because when you look at some of those top teams like the Baltimore Ravens, they're on prime time every single year. They're at least on 3 or 4 primetime games, and obviously you look at Lamar Jackson and you look at the just the Ravens organization and how structured it actually is. It's like even post even losing their GM, it's absolutely insane. The Ravens are one of the best organizations. They can they had a phenomenal draft. Receiver wise, question mark, but everything else has just been it's been ran spectacular. I mean, it's incredible. And there's a reason why with John Harbaugh and that Ravens organization, why they're one of the best. But the fact that the Bills are just a part of that discussion is just absolutely incredible. It's incredible to see that we have this many primetime games. We're one of the top most, we're not just one of the best football teams in the National Football League. We're one of the most popular teams in the National Football League, coming from a small city like Buffalo, New York. It's absolutely, it's crazy, and I'm honestly excited to go to go to some of those games and cheer on the Buffalo Bills. But man, I mean, like I said, you look at the Dallas Cowboys, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm really looking forward to that matchup, Dak Prescott versus Tom Brady, and seeing what could potentially happen in that potential matchup. Again, I look at Tampa versus New Orleans. I'm more excited to see if Jameis Winston can stay healthy and if that Saints team can stay healthy, because the Saints have had the Saints in the beginning stretch, those first 7-8 games, they've had Tampa Bay's number. And you look at New Orleans' roster, that was a banged up roster last year where they missed around 3 out of the 5 offensive linemen. Evan Kamara was not healthy. He was pretty much banged up all year. You missed Michael Thomas. They missed some of their best outside threats. Their defense just couldn't really stay healthy a lot there often. So now that you're going to have a lot of those guys coming back, and then you add in Tyrann Mathieu, and potentially, with Jarvis Landry in the slot, and now, potentially maybe Odell Beckham Jr. They've been in talks that, hey, Odell Beckham Jr. potentially come there, and if he can get to healthy, you add in Jarvis Landry, Michael Thomas, and Odell Beckham Jr. with Chris Olave. I mean, that's a dangerous wide receiver core. So I'm very interested in seeing about about the Saints versus Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because that's going to be a fight for that division. I think for the most part we can agree that the Saints and the Panthers are just two teams that are just kind of just washed out a little bit there. But
You talking about the Falcons too?
Yeah, the Falcons. I'm sorry. Yeah, the Falcons and the Panthers. Obviously, those two teams are kind of out of the discussion, at least for now. So those are two teams in that division that are going to be fighting head on to see who can take control. We'll see what happens if it's going to be Jameis Winston, or if it's going to be somebody else that can take reins and help that team potentially dethrone Tampa Bay. Also, Lions, Jaguars. I didn't, again, two teams that are not going to make the playoffs, but still, you got the number 1 overall pick versus the number 2 overall pick. Obviously, again, looking at the Jaguars Twitter space, because it's interesting to see what their thoughts were. You had one half that's like, okay, you know what, I'll take Trayvon Walker, and then you have the other half that's completely like, no, we need Aiden Hutchinson, we need that guy. Lions fans are absolutely ecstatic, but to see that Trayvon Walker and Aiden Hutchinson there from that first week, it's kind of fans are going to compare. They're going to look at the game. They're going to compare stats. They're going to say, hey, if Aiden Hutchinson has, let's say, he has like 3 sacks and Trevor Walker has like 1 sack, it's like, oh, well, Aiden Hutchinson, I told you he should have been the number 1 overall pick. And, Trevor Walker, obviously is going to be down for it. But obviously, it's just games like that, fun matchups that honestly is going to bring a lot of excitement, even though that those are not the 2 best teams in the world. It's just, again, it's always the what if. People are always extremely curious when it comes to seeing particular prospects shine out. So that's going to be a very, very fun one to watch. I like the Jaguars, that game, Jaguars and the Lions. That's going to be a fun game that I'm going to pay attention to at least.
Yeah, you got to be a real true football diehard to watch a game like that, which I would too. I think those are 2 teams that are, they're really just laying the groundwork for what they'll be in the future. And I really, really like what Detroit put together in the draft and throughout the offseason. And I just think that Coach Campbell, he's shown that he can get guys to follow him. He's a leader of men, and I also think with the Jags, anything will be better than what Urban Meyer put on display last season, on and off the field. So, I think with both of those teams, they should both be well improved. So, they might not win 10, 11, 12, even not 8 or 7 games this year, but both teams will be improved. I think one other note that I wanted to mention about with the schedule is, I know most years, people, fans like myself included, complain about Thursday night games and how weak the schedule is, and just some of the. I mean, it's normally a mishmash of, you see a lot of blowouts, you see a lot of stars sitting out, especially now that there's 17 games in 18 weeks. You see guys sitting out more often, especially on short schedules. So, but this year's Thursday night schedule, I'm telling you, this might be the best we've ever seen.
It's lit. It is insane.
Insane.
It is
You got
crazy.
Chargers, Chiefs, Steelers, Browns, Dolphins, Bengals, Colts, Broncos. The first dud you might see is Commanders, Bears, but then after that, you got Saints, Cardinals, Ravens, Bucks, Eagles, Texans, again, another dud, and maybe another one here with Falcons, Panthers, but a division rivalry game. You got Titans, Packers, Bills, Pats, Raiders, Rams, Niners, Seahawks, again, another divisional matchup. Those are always closer than expected. The worst quote unquote game we might see is Jags, Jets. But then also you wrap it up with Cowboys, Titans. So I'm glad that they decided to, or that now that it's Amazon has the rights to the Thursday package now.
Yes, it's Prime, Amazon Prime.
Yeah. So the fact that Amazon got that and was adamant about their game slate, I think is huge. And now we're gonna actually see, for the most part, we're gonna see matchups that we want to see on Thursday night, not just on Monday night games and Sunday night games.
Yeah, man, and even that what Jets Jags game, that's that number 1 overall pick versus number 2 overall pick. I mean, that's man. I mean, the headline. I mean, that's going to create some nasty headlines, even though the actual game might not be the best to watch. That's still. I mean, the intrigue of Trevor Lawrence versus Zach Wilson, who should have been the number 1 overall pick, is going to be. That's interesting. Oh man, I'm just excited. That Thursday slate is. You're right. I think that's the best we've seen, that we've ever had. Normally it's just so you might have some good games. It's just but for the most part, it's always kind of been a poor man's version of Sunday night football, Monday night football, and now the fact that with Amazon Prime. And even with the broadcast team, that you're not going to add in a very entertaining broadcaster like Tony Gonzalez right into the mix-up. I mean, it is going to be absolutely fun. The worst part, I would say, is that you got to have Amazon Prime. You got to have it. That's probably the worst part about it. But for the most part, that I'll spend my money. I'll spend my money in order for me to watch some Thursday night football. And obviously, again, because we're obviously for Bills fans out there, you don't got to be too worried, because I'm sure that we'll probably have some local broadcasting, so you guys won't miss that Bills Packers game. But taking a look at the chat, man, shout out to G Bama boy, Roll Tide. Oh yeah, Roll Tide all the way. October 8th. Can't wait for it. I'll be down there, so I can't wait for it. Thank you, Tyree. Thank you so much for the support. Real talks in the chat. Some of the normal suspects from my YouTube channels over here. So thank you guys so much for showing FamBase Sports love. But yeah, guys, like I said, we are on Tuesdays, 7 p.m. Catch us. We're going to be here. We're going to be here live. We're going to talk pretty much anything about sports, whether it's college, whether it's recruiting, whether it's, and obviously our Buffalo Bills, NFL sports talk, basketball sports talk, which will be our next topic that we're going to talk about just in about a second. But yeah, we just want to say thank you guys so much for stopping by for the YouTube, for our YouTube channel. And obviously you can catch us on Twitter, on Facebook. You can catch us pretty much on every social media platform. We will be there for you guys. But now we got to talk basketball. We're in the playoffs. Kyrie, I'm going to let you take this away. I'm going to let you take it away, man, because you are definitely a bigger basketball fan than me. But like I said, what is your take for tonight, and who do you have winning?
For sure. First off, got a shout out to one of my guys in the comments too. Shout out to RT, my boy Ryan Thomas. I know he does a lot in this communication space too. So shout out to my guy over there. But just talking a little bit about the NBA playoffs, man, it's been an interesting playoffs. It's been real back and forth in terms of, you got teams getting blown out. You got guys getting hurt, stars missing action. I felt like last year we saw some stars missing action. Anthony Davis got hurt. I know CP3 missed a little bit of time. Giannis got hurt towards the end of the playoffs last year. But, just talking about this year's playoffs, the conference finals specifically, it's been kind of lackluster. But I just honestly, it's been unfortunate to see, a team like the Memphis Grizzlies last round where, John Morant gets hurt, they eventually lose the series. Now seeing what's going on in this Boston Miami Eastern Conference final, where on one night, the Celtics are blowing out the Heat. The night before, Heat are blowing out the Celtics. I mean, to also see too, Jimmy Butler's gotten hurt, Marcus Smart's gotten hurt, Robert Williams has been back and forth in the lineup as well. So obviously injuries are a part of the game, but it's unfortunate when it's caused so much. Like the injuries have caused so much of a swing in each game, because game one of the Eastern Conference Finals, Marcus Smart was out with injury, but also Al Horford tested positive for COVID. And then the second game, Kyle Lowry was dealing with some injury stuff. He's been dealing with injury stuff all throughout the playoffs, but he missed some action. And then Marcus Smart gets hurt in game 3. He misses game 4, but so it was just a lot. It's been a lot. And then on the flip side, in the Western Conference Finals, that's really been a dud, because it's really like a microcosm of of the LeBron James experience, where Luka Doncic putting up unbelievable numbers, balling out like he normally does, but at the end of the day, the best team on the floor is the Golden State Warriors, and you hate to see it. And I think we do this a little bit too much at times, where you've got a superstar talent who is great, and they get so far and things like that, and they come up short on a big stage, and we're like, oh man, but you know what, Luka's only 23, and you know what, well, he's got so much room to grow. I'm sure he'll get back there. Like, I know it's a different sport, but Dan Marino was playing in the Super Bowl in year 2 and never got back. So I mean, I really hope that Luka is able to hopefully at least get a win tonight before the series ends, and but at the same time too, like I really, I'm not sure what'll end up happening. Maybe they don't. Maybe they aren't able to put the right unit around him. And that he's not able to get back to a stage like this. You really just never know. And maybe he has to leave to do that. There's just a lot of different scenarios that I think are got to be accounted for with this also. Again, like I said, I just it's been kind of disappointing, and too, it's very rare. I feel like it's also very rare where most of the guys that we're gonna see on the first team All NBA team are home.
They're home.
All of them are home. Jokic is home. Obviously the league MVP. Runner up Joel Embiid. He went home in the second round. You obviously have Giannis Antetokounmpo done now, and even Devin Booker and those guys in the Suns. Like, to see the playoffs play out the way that they have, I'm not necessarily surprised, because I always thought that the Warriors had a really strong chance. Their team is just so deep. I really like what Boston's put together, and obviously the Heat coming off the run they did a couple years ago. And, even with Dallas, they might have the best player remaining left in the playoffs, but, it's just, again, it's crazy to think it's played out the way that it has, because, the regular season basketball, I think more so than any other sport, regular season basketball is so different than regular season or than postseason basketball. So, the proof is really in the pudding right now. And, I guess we'll see what happens in the finals. I guess, Golden State will be there, but I do think Boston will be the team that matches up with them. So I'd like to see that, but, we got to see how it goes over the next couple of days.
Yeah. And just answering one of my subscribers from my channel, his name is D Brown.
Yeah.
So we did a live stream about this last week, talking about this, talking about the tragedy, what happened in Buffalo, New York. Obviously it was, I'm not going to dive too deep into it, but obviously, it was probably one of the saddest events ever to happen in the city of Buffalo. And, for the most part, we've all had some type of connection, to, obviously the people that lost their lives there. And actually, I just came from before doing the live stream here. I actually kind of stopped by at Tops. We actually kind of visited the memorial there, and obviously there were so many people from like different areas. You had people I met someone from Ohio. He was a huge Ohio State fan. I met some people from Mobile, Alabama. I met people from Texas. I mean, it was people all over across the country that were visiting memorial and just giving their, obviously just giving their, their remorse, and obviously just, want to pay their respects to the situation. So, if you want to check out the live stream, we did one last week. You can check that out at FamBase Sports. on our YouTube channel over there. But for the most part, man, we're hanging in there. We're doing our best, and obviously it's something that we're definitely not going to forget. But yeah, man, thank you so much for just checking up on us, man. We definitely really appreciate it, man. And we appreciate all the people down there in the comment section that's able to do that for us as well. But just talking about some playoffs real quick, guys. Obviously with Luka Doncic, man, it's just been a one-man show. And I honestly feel so bad for Luka. It honestly kind of feels like LeBron James when he was with the 2015 or 2016 Cavaliers, where it was just a one-man show. I mean, he was behind the train. I mean, if he fell down, then the entire ship went down. So for the most part, I mean, looking at a player like Luka Doncic, who surpassed Dirk Nowitzki for the most 40-point games, and he's only been in the NBA for what 3-4 years of his career.
Yeah,
Dirk's been playing for over 20 years, and the fact that Luka was able to surpass him is absolutely incredible. But the fact of the matter is that he just doesn't really have any help. I mean, Spencer Dinwiddie has kind of been a little bit of a disappointment in the playoffs after having a pretty decent regular season. Obviously, you got Durner, who's been okay for the most part for them, but he's not providing any help. Their bench has not been as effective. They're a team that normally relies a lot on their size. They have bigger guards, bigger forwards than a lot of the teams in the NBA, but they just can't really take advantage of their size and their physicality over, of course, the smaller team of the Golden State Warriors, who is, of course, they're faster. You can make an argument they're a little bit more, I wouldn't say more athletic, but they're way more disciplined. I wouldn't say they work it. Well, they're showing that they're working harder, but obviously the Mavericks have having the credit that they outwork their opponents. Definitely not happening in this series. But obviously the best thing that's going on for Golden State is just their efficiency. They know how to score. They're a very, very efficient team from mid-range and from three-point land. Rebounding the ball has been a shock because, again, their size, that's something that Dallas was supposed to be known for. And Golden State has out-rebounded Dallas in pretty much 2 out of the last 3 games. So that's a major concern to me, that not only are you missing three-point shots, you're having a horrible three-point percentage, you're not making shots from outside of the perimeter, you're not making shots from the mid-range, but you're also getting out-rebounded, especially on the offensive board as well, to the Golden State Warriors. That is a huge, huge concern, because you look at the best rebounders in that team, it's Looney and Draymond Green, and then it's pretty much everyone else. That's a big concern to me. So they need some other players to really step up for them. Especially if you want to try to, get it, at least make it respectable. Get a game under you. I mean, it's clear and obvious that the Warriors are the better team. Stephen Curry, Jordan Poole has been a huge step up for them. Andrew Wiggins has showed out in this entire series, especially playing defensively and making probably the best highlight in all of the NBA 2022 season with his dunk over Luka, who they tried to call an offensive foul. So, that entire team has stepped up to the plate recently, and they're just deep. They're deep everywhere, man. I mean, Golden State has around 7-8 guys that can get you 15 to 20 easily. I mean, the only player that's not going to do it for you is maybe Looney, but even Looney, he's a hard-working dude on the boards who had 12 rebounds in the first half alone. So they got to do better on the glass. They need to be more physical. They got to try to at least have, impose some type of challenge when playing against, playing perimeter defense against Golden State. But for the most part, if there's anything that Mark Cuban and that Dallas Mavericks organization can do for next year, they need to try to get another player, or they need to either try to get another superstar that can work with Luka Doncic, or you got to try to get a bench that can complement Luka. Because at this point, Kristaps Porzingis, that's kind of been a failed project. He's been hurt on and off there for the Dallas Mavericks, and even when he does play, he's averaging 16, 17 points per game. So can you really rely on Porzingis? And he's not even known for rebounding, being an enforcer on the glass. So can you really rely on Porzingis to play with Luka Doncic for however the next 2 to 3 years? They need other guys that can complement Luka's skill set. And Luka, he's getting better. It's not just about me, selfish ball. He's now trying to include his teammates. He's trying to get his teammates more involved into the punch. But obviously this is kind of the early stage LeBron James where he got that team to the NBA Finals, and then he just went up against the superior Spurs team that he just had no shot. He had no shot of beating that team, but he had a very, very promising future. But it took him a while. It took him change moving to Miami in order for him to go not only get back to the finals, but to potentially win an NBA championship during the 2011 back-to-back NBA championships for 2011 and 2012. It took him another move again when going back to Cleveland and having a bench and superstars that can complement his game. And then obviously with winning the with the Lakers, he had a great bench with Alex Caruso on that team. Obviously Anthony Davis, Anthony Davis was there as well. It wasn't just Russell Westbrook, and then it was just everyone else. You need not only another star that can complement your game, you need another bench that can do great work on the defensive side of the ball, that can score perimeter shots, and honestly can be hard workers and enforcers for your team. That's what you need in order for you to win an NBA championship. There's a reason why the Nets have gone home, even with James Harden and Kyrie Irving. There's a reason why they've gone home now. There's so many other different facets, in order for you to win a championship. There's so many different ways. And Luka and that Mavericks team, they just don't really have it. They just don't really have the star power. They don't have the depth to compete with Golden State. And that's all right. If you can learn from this. This is your first time going back to a conference championship since Dirk Nowitzki and that 2011 team. That 2010 team. And
you had it.
But Golden State, for the most part, they're going to win this. They're going to win this game tonight, in my opinion. If not, if they'll lose this game, they'll win it the next one. And we'll see what happens. We're talking about the Eastern Conference, but that's probably just for another discussion.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, that's why, like you said, the star power thing is a real issue. I think I just think about, even with the Mavericks, like that was part of why I think, with them moving Porzingis, because he's a guy that was supposed to be a second star, a co-star, quote unquote, a Robin to his Batman, whatever you want to call it, and it just didn't pan out. It just wasn't, and again, I think the pieces that they got in return are good, but Davis Bertans, he's a shooter. Spencer Dinwiddie, he's a good scorer. He can play on and off the ball. Reggie Bullock is doing this thing as a shooter as well. I know he wasn't a part of the deal, but they've got good pieces. Jalen Brunson, he's had a phenomenal season.
He's had a phenomenal series.
Phenomenal season for sure. And he's going to earn a bag this summer, whether it's with the Mavericks or not, but that's the thing. When your second best player is Jalen Brunson, your third best player is maybe Spencer Dinwiddie, at that point, that's not, and again, it's no offense to them, and maybe they can get over the hump eventually and surpass teams like Golden State and get out of the West. But even getting out of the West at that point, I'm not saying they'd even be favored to beat the Celtics or Miami Heat if whoever comes out of the Eastern Conference. So I think, like you said, it's a learning experience for Luka and whoever's going to be riding with him in the future, whether that's Dorian Finney-Smith, Maxi Kleber, Dwight Powell, all these names like that. But I also think too, like you said, it just goes to show that, hey, you got to get Luka another guy. It's funny. I feel like a guy this would never happen. I don't think, obviously it's the NBA, so can't rule anything out. But I feel like a guy like Klay Thompson is the type of player that Luka really needs next to him, because he doesn't need the ball in his hands really. Obviously catch and shoot, and he can attack a little bit when he needs to, but more times than not, he just just heats up with that ball, letting that ball fly. But also too, he's a great defender, and if there's one chink in Luka Doncic's steady armor, it's he's not the greatest defender in the world. So I think a player like him really could help benefit and really complement Luka's game. So I think that's got to be the type of player that Mark Cuban has to go after this offseason, just because, at the end of the day, Luka can be as great as he wants to be. But, whether it was Charles Barkley, Allen Iverson, DeMarcus Cousins in Sacramento, you can name the guys that were just, elite, dominant, arguably the best at their position in the world. But it didn't even matter because they didn't have enough help around them.
Yep, absolutely, man. And I can throw in another name. This it's a big reason why he went to join the big three. Chris Bosh. Remember Chris Bosh when he was with Toronto, and he was arguably a top 5 power forward, averaging 26 points per game, but he can't even get past the first round, because every time he would go, because he had no one else. It was just Chris Bosh. He had some pretty good death bigs there, but he never had really any good outside shooters. the guard play was kind of spotty, and they were too reliant on Chris Bosh in his post game. That slow paced game was just not going to be good enough. So, obviously there's so many other examples that we can honestly go on for, but you need help. I mean, Luka needs help at the end of the day. And I think for Mark Cuban and the organization, what can you do to get players that can address not only Luka's, weaknesses, his deficiencies, but what are the best players that can complement Luka? That's something that they have to really try to figure out going into this offseason. Because, even if they can't get a superstar, let's say James Harden, let's say, potentially could get a supermax. In my opinion, I think James Harden is starting to slide a little bit. And I don't know if teams are willing to give him that supermax deal. But, obviously he is a star in his own right. Maybe not a superstar anymore, but he's still a star. Do you pick up someone like him? And, Zach LaVine, there's talks about, potentially him. Do you try to get Zach LaVine? Oh, even though, again, he's a guy that he needs the ball in his hands. He's more of that scorer, that pure scoring type, and also not the best on-ball defender, the same weaknesses and deficiencies that Luka Doncic has. So there's a lot of, so obviously you need players that can complement Luka's game, try to make him better. But you look at Golden State and just the formula that they've had. Obviously they had a rough couple years ever since Klay Thompson went down with the I believe it was an ACL injury. Kevin Durant went down with a very similar injury, and obviously Klay Thompson, he's had to fight and crawl his way back to being in this type of position, and it was pretty much just Stephen Curry. But the fact that Jordan Poole was able to pretty much hold his own the entire season, that he can potentially get a huge contract extension. Draymond Green, with his leadership and his great defensive abilities and how he can pretty much spread the ball around as a pretty decent distributor and ball handler. Klay Thompson as a catch and shoot player and great defensive player there. And then Looney, his hard work, his grit, his toughness, where you can make an argument that he honestly could be a captain on if it wasn't for Draymond Green, could be on captain on pretty much any other NBA team. It's just the structure from head to toe, very similar to the Buffalo Bills, where you have great ownership, you have great management, you have a great head coach and future Hall of Famer in Steve Kerr, and all of a sudden you just have the pieces around your superstars and Stephen Curry, Draymond Green, and Klay Thompson. You're not relying on those three. Stephen Curry can have a cold night, and Jordan Poole and Klay Thompson can have hot days, and you can still win, no problem. That's something that honestly is extremely impressive, because even in 2015, where you had Harrison Barnes on that team, that wasn't a team. I'm sorry, 2014, where you had Harrison Barnes. It still was a team that you really needed Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson to step up. Otherwise, the chances of you winning were going to be extremely slim. Now, I think this team is way better than what they were in 2014, because, again, they have other guys that can put up 20, 25 points easily if they need them to. They need those players to potentially step up. And I think a big reason why this is happening was because of Klay Thompson's injury, was because of the down years where they were going in, when they tried to make that trade to acquire Andrew Wiggins. And obviously, Andrew Wiggins and that style of play that Golden State wants to play, it's not there. But the fact that these players that were known for being selfish are adapting and continuously getting better and working throughout the system, it just goes to show you, man, that Golden State is they're just a well-ran organization. And even though the Dallas Mavericks have, they're extremely good, Luka Doncic has changed the Dallas Mavericks' fortune. They're not there yet. They're not exactly where Golden State or Milwaukee was back when they won their championship, where they had all those surrounding pieces around Giannis and Middleton. Golden State could be a favorite next year, and that's assuming they're going to win a championship. They could be a favorite next year because of the amount of pieces and just the structure and just the way the organization is just well ran. It's just extremely impressive to watch that they went from a dynasty to a team that's they've kind of fallen apart, to then all of a sudden these players like Jordan Poole is stepping up to the plate, and now potentially they're going to go back to being the best team in the NBA. It's absolutely phenomenal to watch, man.
Yeah, it really is crazy. I think about that era, that 2019-20 season, even last season a little bit. Last season they took their lumps and had their growing pains, lost to the Lakers and the Grizzlies in the play-in. So they didn't even make the playoffs. But I think it was important for them to recalibrate a little bit. People forget too, like that first season that Klay Thompson got hurt. Obviously, KD left. Draymond was dealing with some injury stuff, more minor things than anything major. But even Steph, he missed a lot of action that year because of his hand injury. So those guys those two specifically, they got to refresh themselves a little bit and kind of recalibrate. And, I mean, it was really like a free year for them. So they got to take a lot of pressure and stress off their legs, which, I don't think was a bad thing. When you make 5 straight finals runs, like, that's a lot of extra basketball you're playing. So I think that was needed, but I think it really just is a kudos to the Warriors culture, because you got, I remember watching Jordan Poole his rookie year, and, I thought he had all the talent in the world, but like, he just had to, get it together. He really was trying to find his way. He was trying to figure out his body still. He was trying to just figure out his game. He was trying to figure out whether he was an on the ball guard, off the ball guard, whether he could run point, whether he could, play more primarily at the 2, play with Steph. So, and then obviously he had to make the adjustment once Clay came back this year as well. So like, playing with Andrew Wiggins, like, there was a lot of different things he had to factor in. So, I really think that, it's really a kudos to them, because there were a lot of, they weren't afraid to take chances. I think about the D'Angelo Russell trade. He was a good, stable option to hold things down, especially as you lose a guy like Kevin Durant. I think also, too, to be able to develop guys like Eric Paschall, Damian Lee, you send Paschall off, but you keep Damian Lee, Gary Payton Jr. to become the player that he's become today. So it really just is a kudos to the Warriors staff and their management team, because, I think they've truly become what the Spurs were, where, obviously they have their staples. They have their main stars. They have, Steph, Clay, and Dre. It's a tried and true formula, but, this is a new iteration. It's like part 3, of what they've become. The Mark Jackson era was one thing when they were kind of emerging, obviously, being the best team on the planet, essentially, for 5 years in a row. That was one era. That was their golden age. But then, to see them come up with this thing now, especially after such a short rebuild, I think it's really a kudos to them. And the future looks bright. To be able to say you've got a roster where you can hand things off to Jonathan Kuminga and Jordan Poole, and to Gary Payton II. Like, I mean, hey, that you can't really ask for too much more than that. But especially to see those guys getting the experience that they are now with the original trio. Obviously, Iguodala's back now too. He's not playing as many minutes, but to see that championship core working with those guys too, man, I mean, the sky's really the limit. And Golden State, 5 years from now, could still be on top of the basketball world as we know it.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. But before we kind of close out here, I do want to answer this, answer this question. And we can definitely ask you too, man. But he says Team World or Team USA for basketball. So as far as their star power goes, because honestly, you asked me 15 years ago, the obvious answer would be Team USA. But now with so many European stars, Nikola Jokic, he won back-to-back MVPs. Giannis Antetokounmpo from Greece he was a former MVP. Luka Doncic is an MVP candidate. I mean, there are so many really good European basketball players now where it's kind of like Rudy Gobert, one of the best defensive players in the National Basketball Association. I mean, it's like now it's kind of like if we had this matchup between the best European players and the best U.S. players, would USA win easily? Would they win that? Because we've seen at times during the Olympics or some of the World Championships where we've despite the star power, we've struggled against these guys. So, I kind of, leave it up to you, man. Who do you have?
Yeah, like, I mean, I do at the end of the day, I do think Team USA wins. You obviously still have LeBron, you still have Kevin Durant, you still have Ja Morant, Steph Curry, still a lot of huge names. Karl Anthony Towns, Devin Booker, young and old talent. But I think what it is like just seeing the fact that that Team World has emerged so much so, and that there are such major superstars. I mean, think about it. Luka Doncic is arguably the best young basketball player on the planet. And then the last 4 MVP winners. and a guy who is the reigning league MVP, was also defensive player of the year last year. I mean, he's got every stat or every award in the book, with Giannis Antetokounmpo. So, I mean, I just think that the world has caught up so much that it's kind of thrown people off, and that's why it's funny you that we're ending with this, because shout out to my guy ironically D Brown, Darius Brown. He was talking to me the other night about how he was like, man, obviously when Lil Wayne was the best rapper in the world, Kobe Bryant was the best basketball player in the world. When LeBron was the best hooper in the world, Drake was the best rapper in the world. Like, who do you think is going to come up next, carry the NBA, and like, who could be the top rapper to carry things next with them? So I was just like, man, I don't know. It's hard to really pick because, I think of guys like Jason Tatum, right? Unbelievable talent. I mean, he's one of my favorite, like, players to watch in the world. Like, I can't even, I can't even get into it, how much I enjoy watching him play. But he's a quiet, reserved guy. He's on a franchise. He plays for a franchise that's so much bigger than just him. I mean, obviously he's a great talent, but he's just adding to the Celtics legacy. And, he's got some other stars next to him, like Jaylen Brown. Obviously a guy like Robert Williams is coming a long way. The defensive player of the year now, and Marcus Smart. So, like, he's got a collection of talent around him too. So, like, as talented as he is, it's not like he has the buildup of a guy like a Luka Doncic, where he really is the lead and act. He's got a lot of supporting actors with him. So I'm really intrigued to see who it is, because I think I do think it's safe to say that Giannis is the best player in the world. I love LeBron. LeBron's my favorite player of all time. But just knowing what Giannis has done over the last couple seasons, I think it's his time right now. But obviously he's still in the middle of his prime, so it's not like he's giving up the reign anytime soon. But there's so many guys that the league could be handed to, because you've got Devin Booker's out there, you got Ja Morant's out there, Jason Tatum's out there. Obviously he's in a little bit more of, towards the back end of his prime, not back end of his prime, but he's more so in the middle of his prime now. But even a guy like a Jimmy Butler, is he a guy that the league could brand itself around? So there's so many names, but I just really can't pick one, because I feel like there's so many different guys that so many of these guys like are in such unique situations. Like, I think a guy like Ja Morant, he reminds me of AI back in the day. I feel like he's like the people's champ, but I'm not sure if that'll mean he'll ever win a championship. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think a guy like, I think all the world of a guy like Kawhi Leonard, but I mean, he's hasn't been able to stay healthy since 2017. And I'm glad you said that, D Brown. You must have been reading my mind. So yeah, I just, at this point, at this stage in the game, I feel like a lot of people can take the crown. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Do you have a thought on who that next guy could be?
Oh man. Honestly, there's so many. Jason Tatum. There's so many young guys. There's so many young guys, man. So many young prospects. Well, obviously, I will say this: it won't be happening in this draft. I don't know. I'm not really having a consideration when it comes to that, man. But again, there's so many young guys, man, that can come in there and just make their takeover. Man, I mean, Ja Morant. I mean, I compare him a lot to. I mean, you compare him a lot to Allen Iverson. I can definitely see it, but I always compare him to Derrick Rose. Just the explosion and just the athleticism that this kid has. I mean, that's the closest thing I think I've seen to a Derrick Rose type of player. Jason Tatum has that Kobe Bryant type of mentality to his game, and over there in Boston, he just has to just figure out how to kind of break through. Obviously, Anthony Edwards from Minnesota had a phenomenal second year. And he's a guy that is a former number one pick, kind of gets a little overshadowed a little bit. And, Zion Williamson's a player that we never talk about Zion Williamson anymore. I mean, when he's healthy, he can average 26, 27 in his sleep, but he just can't stay healthy. He can't. I mean, the diet, he's 300 pounds right now. I mean, it's diet issues, but when he plays, he's averaging 26, 27 points easily. He's unstoppable in the paint area. And he's just an extremely genetic freak. So, oh my goodness gracious! There's so many young guys. I mean, if there's any one player that I think I can probably say, I think it would be Ja Morant, only because he is the people's champ in a way. He's someone that pretty much everyone loves. They love his style of play. He's not afraid of the competition. He's going to try to dunk on you. He's going to try to get through you. He's going to try to break your ankles. He's going to do whatever it takes to get his team to victory. And that's something that you can definitely love and appreciate, because that was Allen Iverson. He was a guy that just did whatever it took in order for his team to win, and his play elevated, just how badly, some of his teammates were, because on those 76ers teams, he did not have the best teams. I mean, he had
Eric
a lot
Snow,
of you go ahead.
Eric Snow and Aaron McKee and
Mutombo was like 39 years of age. I mean, those, oh my God, those teams that he had were just not good. And he somehow, some way was able to elevate those teams. So it's interesting what will happen, man. But yeah, man, to close out the show, man. Yeah, thank you guys so much for stopping by for FamBase Sports. Again, check us out on Tuesdays, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Like I said, we could have kept going for 2 or 3 hours, man, but we got other people that have to do other shows, because there's honestly so much more I want to say about NIL. But honestly, again, thank you guys so much. The usual suspects that are on my channel. Thank you guys so much for stopping by, showing love on this particular channel. Really appreciate it. Guys like Crimson Brave, guys like G Bama Talk, D Brown was able to be extremely active in the chat. So we really appreciate what you guys are doing for us so far. But yeah, guys, check us out Tuesday, 7 p.m. Again, we apologize for what we did last week, but again, for the most part, we're going to be here. We're going to talk sports, whether it's Bills, whether it's NBA talk, whether it's, soccer, maybe. I don't know if that's up to you, Kyrie, but obviously I like to kind of talk a little soccer here and there. So maybe we might sneak some of those topics in there. But yeah, guys, once again, thank you guys so much for stopping by for FamBase Sports. We'll check you guys on the next one. Peace, and definitely have a good night.